channel. So this video here is probably of little interest to our regular subscribers, because normally we do most of our videos on the 4th gen and the 6th gen Camaros. But where it's winter time, it's hard to get out and make any videos, obviously. So I was kind of hoping maybe we could attract some new subscribers, in this case 3rd gen owners. So I thought I'd do a video on some of the best modifications for a tuned port injected 3rd gen. Now this video is basically for people who have a 3rd gen, whether that be an IROC, a Z28, or a Firebird Formula or GTA, and you have tuned port injected, either the tuned port injected 305 or the 350, and you don't really have any interest in LS swapping or switching out the fuel injection for carbureted. This is basically for people who want to keep the tuned port injection. And now, I'm not an expert, but I do believe that these 3rd gens are going to eventually become quite collectible. I know in my area, even right now, the prices on the 3rd gens have gone up pretty good, and I think it's going to just keep going that way. So maybe you have tuned port injected F-body and you don't want to change it. You want to keep it looking stock, but you still like to have a little extra performance. So I thought I'd just do a video on some of the more budget modifications that you can do on these cars. So if I had one of these tuned port engines, one of the first things I would do would be the throttle body bypass. Now, it doesn't add a bunch of power by no means, but in case of modding the car, every little bit counts. So that would be one of the first things. And then some of the cheaper modifications would be like a 160-degree thermostat. That can help, not by much, but it does help. And throttle body airfoil is another good modification. It doesn't add much power, but it doesn't cost that much, and it's easy to install. And then on both the Camaro and the Trans Am, you could replace the factory filter with one of the aftermarket high flow filters. Again, they don't help much, but it does help. Now, if you got a Camaro, on the other hand, as long as you don't drive it in rainy weather, if you pull the intake off, the base where the air filters set, you pull the air filters out and you'll see a bunch of baffles in there. Now, you can go in and you remove them baffles. That really helps airflow a lot. I can remember one of the car magazines doing this years ago, and I can't remember, I think they gained a 1/10, maybe a little more. So that's one of the things you can do. And again, this is if you don't drive it out in a lot of rainy weather. Another thing for the 3rd gen Camaros is LSx Motorsports have it's like a little ram air setup you can put on these. Now, they claim something like 12 horsepower, and that was on a 305 tuned port engine. Another good modification is underdrive pulleys. They're not real expensive. They're easy to install, and they do help. They do add power. And the only issue here is if you're a stereo guy and you got amps and different things added to your stereo, you definitely want to avoid this, because they do affect the charging system. So if you got, like I say, if you got a big stereo, you don't want the underdrives. Okay, so the next modification, which everybody likes, is a catback exhaust. There's probably dozens of different ones online you can find for these cars. You just basically find one that fits in your budget, and some are louder than others. You want to do a little research, but a good catback adds a little power, plus it makes the car sound better. Okay, so the next modification would be a set of headers. If you're in an area with strict emissions, you'll probably have to choose a set of shorties that are emissions legal. Normally, I would just say avoid shorty headers, but the manifolds on these cars aren't that great, so a set of shorty headers that are emissions legal would help. But if you don't have to worry about emissions, definitely get a set of long tube headers. They definitely are the better way to go as far as making power. Okay, now the biggest drawback to a tuned port injected engine is the very long runners. They're great for low end torque, but they pretty much limit your RPM. Like on a 305, they don't really pull much past 5,000, and on a 350 it's even worse. So but there is things you can do. There's lots of different runners out there. Mind you, they're probably a little harder to find. At one time they used to make all kinds of different style of intakes for these cars, but I noticed a lot of them they stopped making, so you might have to go searching on eBay and different places like that to find them. But we're going to say that you want it to look fairly stock. So one of the things you can do is port the base. If you got any experience with porting, and even if you don't, you can watch videos and buy some there's books that you can buy that show you how to do just basic porting. And you can port the base, you can port the upper plenum. There's not much you can do with the runners because they're quite thin. I don't think there's much material that you can remove from them, but you can always buy the bigger tubes, the bigger intake runners, and just port match them, and that can help extend the RPM a little bit. And there's also some aftermarket setups that you can buy now that look fairly stock, and they'll definitely help increase the RPM on these engines. Now mind you, that stuff's a little more expensive. Okay, another good modification you can do on these cars, if you're handy with doing mechanic work, is a little bit of head porting. Now the factory heads on these tuned ports aren't that great, but you can get some gains from just some mild porting. And there's lots of videos on YouTube, and you can buy books to show you how to do the porting. And the main area to focus on these factory cylinder heads would be the bowl area. That's where you'd probably get the most gains. Okay, now if you've got a little bigger budget to spend, you could always buy a set of aftermarket cylinder heads. Now the next modification would be a camshaft. Now these early tuned ports, I believe the 85 to 86, a lot of them still had the flat tappet cams. And mind you, they were all 305 anyway, so you might not want to put too much money into a 305, but if you do, you might want to upgrade from the flat tappet cam and get the kits that allow you to upgrade to a roller cam. Now the key when it comes to camshafts is on these cars with that intake setup, the long runner intake, you got to go very mild. You don't want to go with a big cam. You don't want to be looking for that chop that everybody always wants out of their cars. You don't want that with the tuned port engine. You'll just end up with a car that doesn't make any low end torque, and it don't make no top end power either. So you want to keep the cam very, very mild. A good place to go for if you want to pick a camshaft is Richard Holdner has a YouTube channel. He tests just about everything, but he's got lots of videos up on the tuned port stuff, and he'll kind of give you an idea what you should be looking for a cam. But like I said, you want to keep it quite mild on a tuned port engine. Okay, one of the things I left out was tuning. Now if you do cam, you're going to have tuning. But if you're just doing the basic bolt-ons, and even if you're doing a little porting on the stock cylinder heads and the stock base of the intake, you probably won't need any tuning, because these are usually set up to be fairly rich from the factory, so they got a little bit of leeway in there. But when it comes time, if you do want to do a cam, or if you want to add aftermarket cylinder heads, you're going to have to think about tuning. And there's still lots of guys out there that tune these cars. So you'd have to do a little research and find out who's got the best reputation for tuning these cars, and get in contact with them before you pick a cam, and then they can kind of help you choose a camshaft. Plus, at the same time, you can ask them if you're going to need injectors or not, because I'm not sure how far the factory injectors will take you. Far as the bolt-on stuff goes, and even, like I said, a little bit of head porting and stuff, I think the factory injectors are fine. But when you add a camshaft, that would be the time to talk. You're going to need to talk to a tuner anyway, so that'd be the time to talk to them and ask them if, in their opinion, if you need a set of injectors, and also the fuel pump. You may need to upgrade the fuel pump at the same time. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet is gears. From what I can tell, these cars can come with 273s, 308, 323s, and I think I even read that some of them come with 342s. Anyway, if you got a 308 or deeper gear, I think I'd just stick with them. If you got a 273, then it would be worthwhile to upgrade to, say, a 323. But I wouldn't go with 373 gears or anything deep like that, because these cars make good low-end torque, and they don't make much on the top end unless you change the intake to something like you can get mini rams and whatnot for these. But like I said, this video here is for the guys that want to keep their tune port looking reasonably stock. So if you got 308s or deeper gears like 323, 342, I'd just stick with those gears. Okay, when it comes to torque converter, normally that's one of the first modifications that you probably want to make when you're trying to lower your quarter mile times. But in these cars, I think I'd wait till I had my final setup, my cam, if you're doing head work or whatnot, and see where you're at, see what your 60-foot times are, and then choose a torque converter. And you wouldn't want to go, I wouldn't go any more than 2800 on these cars. Okay, another good modification for these cars are the 1.6 ratio full roller rockers. Whether you go cam or not, these can actually help by adding a little bit of extra valve lift, especially if you ported the stock cylinder heads. It would make it'd give you some pretty good gains. But if you're doing the roller rockers and the cam at the same time, you got to remember to make sure and check your piston to valve clearance, because you don't want to have an issue there. Anyway, guys, these are just more, I don't know if you'd call them budget, but it's more beginner stuff, the modifications. Now, all these modifications aren't going to make the tune port be like super fast, by no means, but not everybody wants to run 10-second quarter mile. Some people just like what they have, and they like to have a little more performance, so that's why I thought I'd do this video. Anyway, guys, if you're watching this channel for the first time, just we'd appreciate it if you hit the like button, just so it gives me an idea if we need to kind of do some more videos on like tune port injected Camaros and Trans Ams. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.